Progress, especially the kind of progress that humans build with their own hands, has always been like a small miracle that keeps repeating every single day. Machines working instead of us, freeing us from burdens we once thought were, well, eternal. Lifting stones, plowing fields, running factories, even thinking sometimes. Our hours became longer, our skins softer, our lives easier. But sometimes, when this comfort stretches too far beyond its limits, the magic kind of flips on the magician. Blessings twist into curses, and the very progress we once dreamed of turns into a nightmare. One we might not be able to wake up from. And thinking about the near future, that future we always picture in bright neon lights, opening steel doors to us, lighting up Earth's night with dazzling colors. But truth is, it hides heavy shadows behind all that glow. When our imagination carries us there, we start drawing expectations. Some of them beautiful, some of them dark like pieces of coal. Expectations that don't stay locked inside our heads for long, but instead, they become people. And that's where we quietly hand things over to the main character of our story, Adam, a young man who once saw the future as a gateway to salvation. But he soon found out it might have actually been a carefully laid trap. After Adam lost his job at that huge factory, he felt like an extra piece of metal tossed aside into the scrapyard. For years, that factory had been his second home. The smell of hot oils, the roar of the machines, even the whistle that signaled the end of the shift. It all had a special kind of music to his ears. But poof, all of it vanished in a blink. When management decided to replace the workers with long rows of cold metal robots that didn't need tea breaks, never asked for a moment to wipe sweat off their foreheads, didn't demand a paycheck at the end of the month. You just paid for them once, and they'd work tirelessly, with flawless precision, and a steady hum that never stopped. From that day on, hunting for a job became, kind of like chasing a mirage for Adam. Everywhere he went, he got the same bitter answer. Sorry, we already have a fully automated system. Misfortunes, well, they never come alone. His only son, the last light in his eyes, was struck by a sneaky, vicious disease that devoured his small body in just a few weeks. Doctors told him there was a chance, but it needed immediate surgery. Expensive, couldn't wait a single day. Adam opened his palm over the last of his savings, tried to do the math, but the numbers, they kind of laughed back at him cruelly. He went knocking on doors, relatives, old friends, small charities, even tiny banks in shabby neighborhoods. But every door shut in his face, either with polite excuses or hollow words dodging his pain. And on one cold night, he sat by his son's bed, holding that tiny hand, until those little fingers stopped moving. And just like that, the last reason he had to wake up each morning was gone. Years ago, he lost his wife while she was giving birth to this very child. And now, he lost the child too, leaving Adam's heart empty, except for a crushing weight, like a boulder pressing down on his chest. Adam stayed locked inside his house for days that dragged into darker weeks. He didn't step past his doorstep, almost as if he'd sentenced himself to house arrest. Not for any crime, but as punishment, like he saw himself as the real culprit. He'd sit for long hours in dim corners of his room, staring at nothing, replaying his life over and over. Why is life getting back at me? What did I ever do to deserve this? Questions that gnawed at him like starving dogs, until there was nothing left of his heart but brittle bones. Was he really to blame? Or was he just a victim? His mind kind of froze on that thought. He kept whispering it in his head. Victim, victim, until the word rooted itself deep inside him like a rusty nail. Yes, he was a victim of this new world, a victim of these silent robots that first stole his livelihood, then robbed him of his son by pushing him into helpless poverty. And when he looked out the window, up at those towers built by the companies that now stretched above the clouds, he saw all the wealth pouring into the pockets of factory owners and giant corporations after they got rid of humans entirely, while the rest, people like him, were crammed below the poverty line, begging for crumbs, stripped even of their right to dream. And from the womb of that despair, a dim idea was born inside him, a dark, heavy idea that wasn't quite formed yet, but kept growing with every painful thump of his heart. When Adam sat there, hunched over his old screen, watching lines of code race by, he quickly realized that what he knew about programming was, just scraps, barely enough to get through a simple digital garden gate. But his goal was way, way bigger than that. He needed deep, risky, almost forbidden knowledge, the kind you wouldn't find in printed books or in cheerful online courses. So, without even blinking, he poured what little money he still had, savings that might have kept him afloat for a couple of months if he'd tried living. Normally, right into dark web forums, buying hacked scripts, attending workshops run by anonymous hackers over encrypted calls. He dove into groups buried deep in the internet's shadows, places crowded with people who had no fear of laws and whose consciences probably didn't exist. Some sold him secrets for a price, some tested him with brutal challenges. Hack this server in 48 hours or don't ever come back. As months rolled on, these trials sharpened his mind. Kinda like how a sculptor chips away at stone to reveal a cold, determined statue. His drive never faltered. Revenge kept whispering in his ear every night. Learn more, get closer, don't back out now. Until one day, Adam found himself knowing the ins and outs of operating systems and networks in ways that even surprised him. He had become, well, far more dangerous than he ever imagined. But even though the plan taking shape in his mind seemed perfect, there was still this heavy dilemma pressing on his chest every night. How am I gonna actually get my programs into these metal beasts scattered everywhere? Sneaking into each robot system one by one was impossible. There wasn't enough time, and taking that kind of risk, it would mean losing everything if even a single breach was caught early. So he plunged back into hacker lore, reading tales, studying their tactics, learning tricks that sounded like urban legends. And there, he found his answer. Update attacks. Companies regularly sent software updates to their robots. Performance upgrades, security patches, stuff that reached robots in factories and warehouses, with just a few clicks from their central offices. If he could just slip into that update channel, or fake it altogether, he could plant his programs right inside them, and no one would suspect a thing until it was too late. It was a genius move, and also terrifying, but Adam didn't stop there. He began gathering data on every model of robot used in the factories he'd studied. Welding robots, heavy-duty handlers, security bots, even logistics machines managing warehouse inventories. For each one, he crafted a custom program, designed to flip their functions from the inside, turning them from obedient servants into silent machines of chaos. Most importantly, Adam planned to send all these infected updates at once, so these robots would start carrying out his commands simultaneously, in a short, sharp burst, leaving no time for owners or security teams to figure things out before his eerie script was fully underway. It was like setting the timer on a massive bomb. Every second of that. Synchronization meant the difference between total failure or an unstoppable triumph. Adam knew damn well that pulling off something this huge, in a world packed with smart surveillance systems that could learn and adapt, wasn't going to go unnoticed forever. So he laid down a strict rule for himself. Protect yourself before you strike. First thing he did, he coded all his malicious software to have a short lifespan. Exactly 48 hours after activation, the scripts would start wiping themselves out from the core of these robots, erasing logs, deleting digital footprints, like they'd never even been there. At the same time, he was careful never to leave any personal signature hidden inside his code. Instead, he turned to that international hacker network he'd gotten to know during his long months of digging. Some of them, folks just as disgusted by how the world was trampling under greedy corporations, sympathized with his cause. They lent him their digital fingerprints, let him tunnel his attacks through their servers, borrow their virtual identities. So when investigators would eventually trace the paths of this hack, they'd hit tangled routes pointing to dozens of other angry souls, without ever catching sight of Adam himself. He sat there in his dark room, watching the last hours tick away on his monitors, hearing his heart pound in his ears louder than the whir of his computer fans. Now, this was it. 0 hour. The moment he'd been waiting for countless months. Months of sleepless nights, days half-starved, driven by one single thing that stopped him from completely breaking, the thirst for revenge. And now, his finger hovered slowly over the send key, just one moment away from unleashing everything he'd built. The attack started even before anyone realized it. The robots received their new updates. Adam's special programs seeped into their cores, and then chaos swept through everything. Robots that drove cars. They started acting, well, totally nuts, driving the wrong way down streets, ignoring traffic lights like they were never there. Accidents popping up on every single road. You could hear metal smashing into metal, glass shattering, people screaming. It all sounded like some messed up war zone. Then in the factories, the robots that used to stand so precisely by the production lines, they just began wrecking machines, tearing up sensitive equipment. The entire production chains ground to a halt, while mistakes so huge and so wrong sparked giant fires that tore through warehouses, stacked with flammable stuff. And you know what was even worse? The firefighting robots. They actually did the opposite of their damn job, spraying water all over electric panels, blasting foam into corners that weren't even burning, just making everything explode worse. Instead of putting flames out, they helped them spread. In markets and retail stores, robots there were smashing goods, mixing chemicals with food, busting boxes, turning aisles into these gross piles of ruined merchandise. Inside corporate offices, the smart admin bots started spitting out disastrous commands. Money was getting routed to wrong accounts. Massive orders were suddenly cancelled. And within hours, some big companies were literally watching. Bankruptcy breathed down their necks. The worst of all, security robots out in the streets. These machines that were designed to protect humans suddenly went after them. They fired tasers at random, chased terrified people down sidewalks, their cameras spinning wildly like they'd lost all sense of who's a threat and who's just trying to get home. And yeah, you could just multiply that picture across every other field. Any place where robots had taken over, it turned into chaos. In just a handful of hours, the neat, proud system these cities bragged about was flipped into a living nightmare. Nobody knew what the hell was happening. Police forces seemed clueless, totally overwhelmed, flooded with emergency calls from every block, without any idea how to actually stop it. The authorities? Completely baffled. They were used to planning for external threats, wars, missiles, maybe the odd cyber attack. But this horror, right inside their own cities, by their own trusted robots? That was never part of the plan. People started fleeing the cities in long lines, clutching kids, dragging what little they could carry. Some buildings caved in from fires and endless rumbling, and injuries. Oh man, in factories, on streets. So many they couldn't even count them anymore. It was catastrophic by every possible meaning of the word. Even Adam. He hadn't expected things to blow up like this. He sat there in his little dark space, eyes glued to news feeds and live streams, whispering to himself, Did I mess up? What guilt do all these people carry for what I've done? Then he shook his head, almost like pushing away a nasty thought, and muttered, No, they were already dead, just dead while still breathing. Maybe when it's all over, they'll actually thank whoever did this. 48 hellish hours rolled by then, like someone hit a giant off switch. The robots all just froze. Their lights went dim, motors stopped humming. Metal arms slumped down like puppet strings had been cut. At first, people felt this weird wave of relief, like the monsters that had shredded their cities finally went back to sleep. But right after that came the brutal truth. These cities, they were now like wounded bodies. Production lines paralyzed, warehouses burned out or empty, transport systems dead, offices stripped of function. Only then did governments and managers realize just how huge a nightmare they'd been brewing for years, trusting machines to run everything and shoving humans out. Suddenly newspapers, TVs, even giant digital billboards started blasting urgent calls. Anyone with skills in manufacturing, mechanics, logistics, or even basic operations, please come forward immediately to help fix this mess. You could see these strange, sad scenes on live broadcasts. Long lines of men and women clutching dusty old work folders, holding on to certifications, wearing faded work uniforms they'd once kept as sentimental souvenirs, now back, offering up the skills that once got tossed aside for soulless robots. At the same time, strict orders rolled out from the top, not attempt to restart their robots until all companies and industrial sites must investigations conclude. Any violation will be treated as a threat to public safety. Bit by bit, signs of recovery started to show in the cities. Smoke cleared, some streets reopened, and humans got busy trying to patch up the monstrous damage those 2 days had left behind. But the scars stayed, half-collapsed buildings, silent production floors, stores still half-gutted. It was like the cities wore giant ugly reminders saying, Look, this is what blind trust in machines will buy you. Meanwhile, investigation committees stacked files sky-high, tech reports, testimonies from workers, security logs, all trying to piece together the story. And pretty soon, they nailed down the cause. A colossal breach. Malicious code slipped into robot updates, rewiring their functions from the inside out. But the biggest question, who did it? The search kept rolling, but it led nowhere. Like the person who'd pulled this off was a ghost, drifting through networks without leaving even the faintest fingerprint. And yeah, after a lot of anxious meetings and scary financial forecasts, business owners started putting out job ads again. Not even all the sweet deals offered by the robot manufacturers, discounts, super guarantees, extra security layers, could tempt them back. They didn't want to risk living through that nightmare twice. The robot makers, they scrambled hard, throwing press conferences and marketing campaigns, swearing up and down they'd boost safety to insane levels, add new sensors, invent smarter threat detection. But governments stepped in with heavy regulations. They forced robot companies to disclose every possible risk up front, handed out clear guidelines urging businesses to only use robots for tasks humans literally couldn't do. It was like, all of a sudden, the world remembered that humans still mattered. And as the investigations dug deeper, realizing whoever did this wasn't just after mindless destruction. If they were, those programs would have kept running much longer. A new idea started to take root everywhere. This was a warning, a cold, shocking message to the entire world. Adam's heart, it had been his compass all along, even through the darkest turns. When the authorities finally published their investigation results, offering their theory on why this ghostly culprit had done it, something really surprising happened. This unknown figure, who'd brought entire cities to their knees, was suddenly being praised by almost everyone. People started calling him the mysterious hero, the invisible hand that restored human dignity, the liberator who broke the chains of greedy machines and their masters. Adam read those headlines feeling, a confused tear well up in his eye. He'd never expected support or even understanding, let alone to be called a hero. But maybe, just maybe, his heart had known the right path all along. Even when his brain doubted, it was revenge and the dark, burning hunger which lit the spark inside Adam's chest. The spark that made him get back up, learn, plan, pull off something millions of others wouldn't have dared to even dream about. And it's strange how revenge wears such a twisted face. It led to devastation, losses, pain beyond measure, but somehow at the same time, in a weird paradox, it brought real life back into human faces. So maybe that's why we've got to be careful with revenge. Not because it's always wrong, but because once it sets your heart on fire, nobody can really predict where it'll drag you, whether straight into a pit or, like with Adam, toward a long overdue awakening. Gave them back their jobs, their sense that this world still actually needed them.